Muy buenas noches y bienvenidos a esta reunión comunitaria del área del Triángulo. Esta noche tenemos interpretación disponible para aquellos que quieren escuchar la reunión en su idioma. Para acceder a la interpretación, por favor, vayan a la parte inferior de su pantalla. Van a ver 3 puntitos suspensivos. Por favor, hagan clic en ellos y de ahí van a escoger interpretación y escogen el idioma de su preferencia. Muchas gracias.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Please let us know if there are any technical difficulties or you need us to take a minute to start and pause. We are wanting to meet with you all today. I know that there has been some questions from the community. We're wanting to give you all some updates, answer some of those questions, and give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you all might have as well, and then give you an update on some of the planning pieces. As mentioned, we really want to cover some of those pieces in today's meeting. We just did the interpretation piece. If you have trouble connecting, please let us know in the chat and we're happy to help you through that. We wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we stand on. The City and County of Denver honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is in traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho peoples. We also recognize that 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land through generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize that current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver. We also want to do a labor acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our country's economy, infrastructure, and resulting generational wealth would not exist as they do today without the stolen and forced labor of enslaved Africans who suffered transatlantic human trafficking, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We acknowledge how these dehumanizing practices have social, legal, and economic legacies that continue to haunt us to this day.
Prácticas deshumanizantes tienen legados sociales y legales y económicos que continúan afectándonos hasta el día de hoy.
Great. As previously mentioned, we want to take a moment to go through the agenda for today's meeting. We're going to cover previous concerns and questions, take a minute to start the conversation there. We'll give you an update around block captains and the connectors program. OV will go over the revised project schedule, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about next steps. I think here, we really are wanting to give you all an update and give you an opportunity to also ask questions. We ask that you, if you have a question, that you raise your hand, whether you're in person or on the chat Zoom room, so that we give you all the opportunity to do that. We ask that you also respect each other's conversations and questions. So if a person is speaking, please don't speak over them. We're all respectful adults in this room, so making sure that we take an opportunity to acknowledge that and have a civil conversation as we go through the agenda today. Great. I'm going to hand it over to
Hi, everybody. This is Alvina. I know SE2 is new to this project. We have been reaching out to folks to just build relationships with you all and make sure that you know that we're an access point for information when it comes to the engagement plan and the block captains. And so Elizabeth is part of my team as well. She's 100% bilingual and fluid. She's from Weld County, Greeley. I live in Wheat Ridge, but I grew up here and have been doing community advocacy work for a long time. So we're happy to be part of this team and hopefully be champions of the block captains and the connectors program to make sure that community is represented throughout the engagement plan. In some of these catch-up meetings that we've had, we've learned that there are some top-line questions that need to be answered. So Mike's going to cover those questions, and then we can get into the updates about the project schedule and everything.
an opportunity to.
Everybody? I'm Jennifer Winkle. I live in Swansea and I'm on the GE Coalition Land Committee.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm settling in. I'm Shannon Hoffman. I'm the project manager for the Global Area Swansea Community Investment Fund.
Alex Gutierrez, Mayor Mike Johnson's office.
Beth Vogelsang with OV Consulting, part of the project team.
Mike Bouchard, Executive Director, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
As Elvina mentioned, Elizabeth here to help you all.
Sandra Ruiz Parrilla, Lyria Global Swansea Partners.
And then anyone that's online that would like to go.
Hi, my name is Christina Garcia. I'm with Birdsea Collective and we run the Birdsea Community Center, formerly the Glowville Community Center.
Thank you, Christina.
Hello, I'm Eduardo Gonzalez. I represent CSU Spur. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Eduardo.
Jessica McCain, member of the GES Coalition Board.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think Lacey might be the last person.
Yep, Lacey Champion with NETC.
Great, thanks, Lacey. Is that everyone? I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. Any last minute, folks? Okay, great. Thank you all so much. We'll get on to the next point of the agenda.
Great. Thank you. If you could go to the next slide. This is hot off the presses, so wanted to just take a minute and share this with everybody. Hopefully everyone received this communication that came out earlier this afternoon. But we are pleased to announce that there is a land exchange that just closed this morning. And as you can see in the graphic here, it's a land exchange between the City and County of Denver and the Western Stock Show Association. And what was exchanged was 1 acre of land known as the Cup North parcel. That's in yellow on this slide. That is south of LEB, south of the CSU Spur, north of the Cup Central Utility Plant, and sort of shoehorned back against the consolidated rail line. And in exchange for that 1 acre, the city is receiving the approximately 8 acres known as Lot O, which lies just to the north of the DPS bus barn site and Johnson Rec Center and that park parcel there. It is has historic urban fill, so it has the same environmental conditions that DPS bus barn does. So that is our first priority, is to figure out how to clean that up. But we are excited to have these acres not end up in the hands of a developer or someone else. They're coming back to the city. They will be part of this Triangle Community Vision Plan. They're within the boundary, and what we will all be looking at of what additional uses and things beyond the public assets that can happen in Triangle. This is now part of that conversation. 8 acres, correct. Yes.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about how long this exchange has been in process, and then does it require mayoral approval?
Yes. So we have been in conversations with the Western Stock Show Association, I want to say since about September on this land exchange. It does not, well, it already has city council approval through our existing land acquisition ordinance that's been in place from the beginning of the program.
So I'm processing. Well, actually, I have a question. Another question. Oh, sorry. Do you know?
Well, how many acres total is the whole triangle? And we're looking at the picture there.
Um,
I'm just trying to envision.
When you add these 8 acres in, I'd have to check my math, but it's over 80 acres now, including the area south of I-70.
for the mitigation piece, I guess just to put it out there, like this piece of land has been talked about for a period of time as the potential place for community housing, community owned housing. But of course, the coalition has been organizing toward land that was taken by eminent domain in a different space. But in any case, I just want to acknowledge that, number one. Number two, is when you say that that mitigation is a part of that land, would there be a commitment from the city to provide funding for that mitigation should it be turned over to community land ownership? Jen, do you want to add to that?
I was assuming that the mitigation would be done by the city.
Our assumption is that the mitigation would be done by the city prior to any land being turned over for community ownership as part of the triangle. Okay, any questions online? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think one of the key questions that I've heard is what's the evolution of the cow? And so that was obviously previous to me joining and running the community engagement program. From what I understand, the cow created that community engagement program. And so my role is to get that up and off the ground and running. And so the members of the cow, individually or as groups, will be invited to be part of that community engagement process, whether it's like block captains, community partners, house parties, whatever you all feel comfortable with. But it's going to be more in the community engagement phases and not like as an official, I guess, table or anything like that. Does that make sense?
So how much will you, the cow, we came up with the plan and we know how to turn out community engagement. So how much of the cow will be included in this parts when you're creating it?
Well, I hope to be connecting with all of you individually or as a group as you see fit as I start phasing these in. But you guys created the plan. So I just want to make sure that it's implemented and we have the block captains and that, everybody's going to get the same updates, that I want to be as transparent about those updates. What are the block captains hearing? What are we hearing at the house parties? And so that is my goal, to share everybody with that information. And then the other roles, like the block captains, we can get into this later, how the community connectors and the community partners all have stipends to participate as well. Because I also want to make sure that if we're using your time, that you're getting compensated for it. So there's compensation within those elements of the engagement plan. Co-design the survey. So I'll let Beth kind of talk about this.
Yes. How will the planning outcomes be checked by the community, and can we co-design the survey? Part of these pieces will be outlined throughout the planning process, and we'll go in a little bit more into detail about what that planning process looks like in today's meeting, a little bit down the road. But I know a lot of you all had questions about what's feasible, what's not feasible, and what that planning process will look like. So we'll make sure to touch on that point throughout the presentation today. What are block captains' responsibilities and their geographical area and compensation? I know I've met with some of the community groups in today's meeting and talked a little bit about what the block captains were, what the community connectors were, and what the responsibilities for the community organizations were as well. We're wanting to continue that conversation today. And we'll talk a little bit more about those three roles and responsibilities individually. I know that we've talked about them throughout the one-on-ones. So we'll go a little bit deeper dive into what that looks like. But block captains will be compensated at about $40 an hour, expected for a 12-month commitment at about 100 hours for those 12 months. So there is compensation built into the structure as identified by the engagement plan that you all put together. And so that's what we're putting forward into the community, is that plan that you all identified. The last two questions I'm going to leave to Mike to answer. I know that those were also some of the questions that you all had in many of the group meetings. So I want to give you all an opportunity to hear those answers directly from Mike.
Great. Okay, so the overall engagement budget for this effort is $653,000, and 40% of that is going directly back to residents or community organizations through community organizations, block captains, and the Community Connectors program. So that is $253,800 right now is the budget for those uses. So I know that was something we heard very loud and clear in October. And that is our commitment to 40% of the engagement budget going directly back to the community. And then finally, another kind of main topic or theme that we've heard are, what are the commitments? Oh yeah, please.
So 653,000 is for the engagement budget, but my understanding there's also $900,000 for planning, and then there's also an expense line item. So can you say what the full budget is, not just the engagement budget? And then can you describe what those what is planning and who are vendors, what's the services under that, and then the other line items?
Sure. And let me check those numbers to give you the most accurate. So on the planning phase, and the planning phase is made up of Merrick, who's an engineer, MIG, who is on our planning team, as well as OV, Beth's team. So those are the three sub-consultants on the planning side. And that budget is $840,000. The engagement that we've discussed, the community portions that I already identified. And then on the consultant side through engagement is MIG, OV, and SE2 combined for the remainder, as well as Civic Trust, who is running our survey platform and who we will be bringing to next week's meeting to start the discussions around survey co-creation. And the total for that, and then there's about 150,000 for expenses, logistics, and other expenses around supporting these efforts, for a total of 1.6 million. Roundish. Any other questions?
I recently learned that there's a document that was made that has different community ownership models. Where did that come from? First of all. Second of all, are you guys committed to just the one type that we talked about on the cow, or are you guys open to discussing other models?
That is a perfect segue. Yes. So that was a document of some research put together by Jacobs, who is our program management consultant and subject matter experts. And we have shared that with, well, let me take a step back. In parallel to the Triangle Community Vision Plan, myself and Millie Barceo with the Mayor's Outreach Office are engaged in a cohort through the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. I'm sorry, and Shannon, who's sitting right here, looking at different community ownership models, how they could be employed in Triangle, but all of which contain a community land trust as a component. So basically looking at the different potential models that may work, how they can work alongside with community land trust. And we're doing a sort of a matrix comparing all of those different models against a set of case studies that will ultimately lead to recommendations for Triangle that will be shared as part of this community vision planning process, probably in April.
Are there any models around the nation that you guys have found that are really good comps to this type of situation, this neighborhood, this community, and all the needs that we're looking for?
este vecindario es
Um,
prioridad.
I think we're starting to develop that research. I don't know that we have the time to dig into it today, but that will absolutely be part of what is communicated and shared from our cohort with the broader community as part of this plan. It's critical to the planning process.
Is it possible for us to see this thing that was created by Jacobs? You know, if you can share that with all of us.
Yes. Okay. And then the final question sort of, it was framed as sort of what are the negotiables and non-negotiables. I think we prefer to frame it as kind of what is the city committing to in this triangle planning process. And so I'm going to run through kind of the high level commitments and the baseline of where we're starting from. So per the framework agreement, the city still needs to construct the remaining public assets to complete the campus. Those include the 10,000 seat, minimum 10,000 seat arena, additional exhibition hall space, and the renovation and adaptive reuse of the 1909 arena and associated parking for those additional public assets. So those are the 4, depending how you slice it, remaining public assets that need to be realized in this triangle community vision plan. In addition, we are acknowledging our plan for our land, the GES community plan for Triangle, and the minimum units and some other kind of minimum elements that were identified in that plan, which include 60 for sale townhomes, 120 apartment units of various mixes, community retail and or vendor spaces, and a 1 acre community plaza. So we, as the city in this triangle planning process, are committing to a minimum of those elements as part of what needs to be in the plan at the end of the day. In addition, we are committed to issuing a community ownership RFP that will include community land trusts as a component based on the outcomes of the community vision planning process later this year. All the development areas will be remediated of environmental contamination according to local, state, and federal standards prior to development. And I think the other important point is that Mayor Johnston and the GES community have both identified that Denver's housing crisis and affordability crisis are critical priorities. And the Triangle Community Vision Plan will include a goal of providing an additional 1,000 units of affordable housing, as well as market rate housing units in support of this effort. That's part of what we will get into. That will be a large component of the discussions we have with community. But yes.
Does that include the workforce housing that you guys were talking about too? Or is that something separate?
That is separate. That's part of equestrian and not calculated in anything we're looking at on Triangle.
Do you have everything you just said like listed somewhere that you can share with us? Okay. And then I love that seems like a change to me that it's not just an RFP, it's an RFP with community land trusts in it. Yes. What will a community benefits agreement process for other benefits on the Triangle look like if you have an idea yet?
Really good question. It really depends on how the remainder of the Triangle is developed. So right now we are, as the city, are acting as master developer of the Triangle. And so as we probably discussed, a community benefits agreement between the neighborhood and the city isn't really a thing. If and when we get to the point where we're issuing an RFP for other parcels in Triangle, that's when the community benefits agreement would flow down ultimately to a developer. But the way that we're approaching it as the city, as we've already started with the existing campus or the initial phases of campus, community benefits are built into how we are delivering the campus, both in upfront capital construction, ongoing operational and financial mechanisms. So as I've said before, At each stage, we continue to raise the bar on how we are delivering community benefits to GES, and Triangle will be sort of the ultimate realization of those opportunities. No comment.
Yeah, I have some comments. Is there gonna be opportunities also for other kind of programs, other kind of fundings for these three neighborhoods? And in the housing part also, when you get to the part, is it gonna be other programs also, other models, like you mentioned, that are gonna be able to be also owning that land? Or it's just gonna be one a program?
Yeah, so we can't say right now whether it's going to be one model for community ownership or multiple models or different types of implementation for different parcels. That's part of what we need to go through with the planning effort. But in terms of dollars, we will continue to look for any dollars available to continue to realize the vision of Triangle. So, for instance, the Vibrant Denver bond recently passed that has significant dollars on the transportation side to build the Marion Underpass and some of the initial transportation and utilities framework. We are looking at brownfields funding and grants for cleanup. We're looking at basically any source of money we can find, state, federal, local, to help realize the full build out. So we will look at any and every opportunity we have to bring dollars to realize the vision. But the planning really sets our roadmap for how we go about finding those and implementing the rest of the campus.
Any questions online? Anyone online who has any questions?
Yeah, I have my hand up, but whenever you want to call on me.
Go ahead.
This is AE. Sorry, I couldn't introduce myself earlier, you guys. I just came out of another meeting. Couple questions, Mike, just for a little elaboration. I'm glad that affordable housing is a priority, but I don't want to, I just, out of respect for, it's been part of the conversation for a long time, not to put just strictly a current mayor's, political marquee on it, but it would help to maybe talk a little bit about what this 1,000 units are. I'm assuming those aren't all on the Triangle. Maybe I'm confused. So could you elaborate on that? And then the rephrasing of the negotiables versus the non-negotiables. I think it's important for us to listen to each other closely. So I hear that the city wants to put some verbiage in there about what the commitments are, which are perhaps not as institutionalized in the framework agreement as some of the other things. But I think there is a sentiment and a reasonable discussion in the neighborhoods about the facilities and amenities, and are they negotiable within the flexibility, if any, or non-flexibility of what the framework agreement and the state and city laws that create this project would allow. So I don't want to gloss over by changing the jargon that there are things to discuss that I think are reasonable, certainly for everyone understanding what all these things are, and if there is something that is more flexible than we might know at this point. So could you just kind of address those two comments?
Yes. What was the first one again? Oh yeah, 1,000 units. So the number comes from actually it's in the GES our plan for our land as well. It references that possibility, and quick look at potential available acres. The 1,000 units was a ambitious goal to be realized in Triangle. So yes, it would be within the Triangle acreage. That is the goal.
Okay, it's good to have that specifically so we can all talk about it. Could be great, could be something else. I don't know, something to talk about. Okay, go ahead. The other
AE, do you mind if I jump in? This is Jen.
Sure, go ahead.
So would those 1,000 units have a community ownership stake?
that's exactly part of what the planning needs to address in community conversations. Sure, it's possible. Yep.
I would say that the presentation of the 1,000 units, and I'm not expressing an opinion either way right now, but that would fall under a general discussion of what's negotiable, non-negotiable, and how the use of the land as a whole organism would be affected by that volume of housing. So that would be part of the creative community engagement process, I hope,
Absolutely.
as it goes on. Okay,
Yep.
so I just want us all to understand that, because I don't want it to seem like a dictate, but there's a lot of creativity there. And then regarding the other question.
Yep. So the other question about the flexibility of the public assets. So the 4 public assets that I listed are what are required for the framework agreement. The design, location, how those intersect and interact with the other uses on the site, all of those questions will absolutely be part of the triangle planning process. Well, I won't say that we'll be able to move the 1909 arena because that is a historic structure that will likely remain in place. But, where we cite these other things and how they interact and intersect with the other uses on the site will absolutely be part of what we discuss with the broader community throughout the next year.
And Mike, I thought of one other quick thing here that's kind of hanging in the background. There was as you recall, there was $5 million moved out of the triangle process into the current phase that's being built. And I was never completely clear about how that was interpreted as a accountable resource in the process of making sure that the total of resources directed at the triangle remained directed at the triangle. So can you comment on what that $5 million was, where it was moved to so that everybody knows, and whether or not that is a resource that has any stipulation that it needs to be redirected back to the triangle now that the situation is moving in this direction?
Let me take that one back and get you a more specific answer from Department of Finance on how they characterize those dollars. But the short answer is they were, in my understanding, they were initially earmarked back in the day for certain uses during the Triangle P3 and have since been redirected to the equestrian P3 in support of that project. But in your specific question about how those dollars are characterized, what the funding source is, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I will commit to bringing those answers back from DOF when we meet next.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question as it pertains to a lot of what I'm hearing from my neighbors. Hamilton? Nicola, yeah. Yeah, as it pertains to concerns that come from my neighborhood, and I know I'm a little late to the game here, but I understand that we're in the planning phase. But in this reframing of negotiables and non-negotiables to commitments, what does the city have in place in terms of protections from things being shoehorned into this plan or things being reneged from this plan? And we hear the word commitments all the time, but I think that transparency is a great start. But again, what are the protections for the community of things just not getting, launched in at the back end of things?
Yep. Great point and clarification. So ultimately, the result of this community vision plan will feed directly into our large development review process that we have initiated with community planning and development. That leads to a framework plan that ultimately leads to rezoning. And the rezoning is the critical piece that requires council approval. And we had a lot of conversation about this during and with the COW. What are the binding commitments that we can put in place on this plan from the city to the community so that there is faith there that we will follow through on what we will spend the next year in conversations with community about. So I don't have an answer for you today. That's part of what we need to develop as this moves forward. But there is that stage gate of council approval that we cannot proceed to do anything without that. So there are steps that we need to go through, and an important stage gate that requires council approval that are going to be checks that start to answer your question, but you need we owe you a more robust description of what that looks like and what those means and methods are to make sure that we follow through on these commitments. Go ahead, Lacey.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, in this study that's happening with all the consultants, is there any studies being done about increase of property values with the flooding of Elyria, specifically with 1,000 new units, and all the improvements that are happening to National Westerns and the comparables in community with like property tax inflation for the community? And is there any plan to help offset that so community members aren't pushed out with the property tax increase with all the improvements National Western's doing?
Just also considering that like property taxes are already expected to go up this year substantially.
Yes, so that will definitely be a part of what the planning team will look at and bring that information to these community conversations. To the question of what support can be offered, in my opinion, that's one of these elements of community benefits that need to be part of this conversation. So as we go through this planning process and look at options, we need to be able to evaluate those impacts and quantify those and look at mitigating factors and ways to avoid the displacement pressures that we know have already been realized through the campus, and potentially will further be so through the development of the Triangle.
Like traffic flow? Is traffic flow something that you're going to talk about?
I'm sorry, can you please talk into the microphone?
That was a side question. I kind of on top of that, the traffic flow just as important, because when National Western is here for those 3 weeks, it's miserable for us living in the community. We can't get from point A to point B. Washington is backed up, clear up, like past the underpass. So we need to consider that too, but that's not my real question. My real question is, the mayor still interested in doing the community housing, the community ownership trust housing model? Is that the one that he's mostly committed to?
Yep. Oh, well, that's one of the community ownership models that we are exploring through the Lincoln Institute. So one among many. There's co-ops and there's a couple other models out there. I will share that Jacob's document so everyone can have a common language of what we're talking about when we talk about these things. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Perfect. I know that we all have a lot of questions too, so I do want to give part of our presentation to maybe answer some of those questions, and then also give you all an opportunity to answer any questions that haven't been answered at the end of the meeting as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, we went over a little bit about block captains and community organizations and community connectors. So I wanted to take today's opportunity to discuss that a little bit more in detail and give you all an opportunity to also ask questions in regards to those three positions and what we're envisioning for the community. These were directly from the engagement plan that the Cal put together, and me and Elvina, our role within you all in the community is to put that field plan up and running and make sure that we have the right folks in the community involved in that process. I did meet with some of you all one-on-one, but if I didn't get to meet you, I would love to, get an opportunity to also have that conversation with you all one-on-one. Part of the community vision plan was to have trusted community organizations who have been in this space for various years lead some of that engagement. We have Spanish, yes. To be part of that conversation and continue some of that engagement as we go through. So community organizations, those are folks who are a 501c3 status in the community that serve the GES neighborhoods who want to get involved in this planning process. Those organizations are going to be trusted partners who have already been doing the work and who really want to involve some of their members, some of their neighborhoods, and have some of that experience along with, GES residents who they serve in those spaces. We're asking for these community organizations to host and facilitate community meetings, workshops, and small group discussions. Whether, they reach residents through their networks, through specific events they host in the community, or just, they have a really strong social media presence. It really depends on some of those pieces that we want to make sure that we get the message out about this planning phase and relying on those community organizations to be those partners with us. The compensation for these community organizations is going to be about $10,000 to $15,000 depending on their time commitment and what they're willing and able to do for the community during that 12-month phase. We're asking that the community organizations have approximately 20 hours per month available to do some of those planning process with us for the next 12 months. And, as we were having these one-on-one conversations, a lot of community organizations said, you know what, we're at capacity. There's so much we're already doing in the neighborhood. What can we do to continue to still be an involved partner, but not necessarily at the 20-hour commitment? And we are willing to work with what the organizations are willing to and have space for. We also understand, that there's a lot of things going on in the community, and there's other priorities that are taking over for this. So we do want to work with community organizations if they're just, willing to hold one event a quarter or host a community event that's just based on these surveys and share their space, or willing to, let their members know around what's going on in newsletters. Like, we want to be able to work with you all in a way that's actionable and that you all are able to also feel comfortable and committed to that piece as well. So if the time commitment is something that is scaring the organizations, we're willing to work with that. We're flexible on that piece. So it's just, we're willing to have those conversations. If we haven't had a conversation, please reach out to me. I'll leave my information in the Zoom as well. But we are wanting to really onboard these community organizations to get the word out about these next two pieces around the vision plan. The next piece that was identified in the engagement plan was block captains, so paid community leaders and neighborhood ambassadors. Block captains would be resident leaders who play really a hands-on role in getting information out to their neighbors. These are folks who live in the community, who have been residents of the community and know their neighbors, know the spaces where their neighbors hang out, and we would be there willing to support them in leadership development. If this is the first time that they're doing outreach with community, we would be there to train them and help support them. There doesn't necessarily need to be leaders who have door knocked before. We're willing to train folks. That isn't a barrier to being a block captain. We want to make sure that folks who haven't been involved and want to get involved have the opportunity to do that. And so the block captain's role is that role for folks. We want folks to participate in some of these trainings, talk to their neighbors door to door. We're looking for 24 block captains. And those residents, depending on, who applies, we're willing to, break up by sections. And I really identify folks within the neighborhood. We do ask that, they do live in the GES neighborhoods. I think it is one of the biggest factors when it comes to organizing community is they have to be from community, right? And knowing their neighbors. So that is going to be a requirement in the application, is that they do have to be a GES neighbor, and depending on how many folks are interested, that's when we would revisit the conversation with you all and saying, no one has signed up to be a block captain, but we want to get the word out. That's kind of going to be like the next step of making sure that we identify who needs to be a block captain. Block captains are going to be paid at $40 an hour for approximately 100-hour commitment for the next 12 months. Yeah.
Are you still using that zone map that you had shared, Beth, at that first meeting for identifying those 24 people?
Yes, we are. We are using the zone map that was in the engagement plan. That isn't going to mean we're not going to hire if the interest is all from one zone and we get to April and there's only one zone that has interest. We have to hire folks. So if they all come from that one zone, we would break them up into the other zones of their neighborhoods. But ultimately, it's if we can get a representative from each of those zones, it would be amazing, right? But sometimes that's not a possibility. And so we do want to hire folks on. So if all the interest comes from one specific zone, we would hire those folks and then have them be a captain of a different zone outside of that zone that they apply within.
Yeah, and you know, those are just lines kind of breaking it into sections. So if we hired people and they're like, you know, it really makes more sense for me to do this zone that looks like this, we're totally open to, that's not, those lines are just helping us organize things for right now.
How are you verifying that the community members live in the actual community?
Yes, so they are asked for their address on the application, and then during the interview process, we would ask for them to bring a mail, what is it called, a verification from their mail that matches that address with their name, a mail verification.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Will that also go for organizations to do this part? Like, I just don't want to see another organization from the south side just come here and want to do this instead of using the organizations that we already have here.
Yes, yeah, it would only be within the GES neighborhoods. Great. Any other questions on the block captains online?
Yeah, just a quick security question for
Yes.
Individuals, I don't need to elaborate, that may not want their address published for a variety of reasons in our fine country right now, but would qualify as residents. Are you going to have a shield up?
Yes, so that the information from the block captain's application will not be shared with anyone outside of the NewCo team. We are going to be asking for the address verification after the fact, and it's more of a, it'll be in person. It won't necessarily be tracked in a system. And the address question on the application is optional.
Okay, thanks.
So you say that the information will only be with the NewCo team? Will that be, I mean, we had talked about having a database that we can look at. Would that include people? No.
Yeah, since there's sensitive information, you all would know who the block captains are, but we wouldn't be sharing their information with you all. Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. Great. Yeah, so we're looking for 24. So if you all, that application, after today's meeting, we will send a recap of the meeting along with a link to the live application so that you all can start sharing it out with your neighbors and folks who you all think should be part of that block captain.
Kind of what AE brought up. Are you guys going to do special training for like ICE and reporting things that might be seen in the community?
Yes, yeah, in our one-on-one meetings, a lot of concerns were brought up around, you know, this community gets door knocked a lot. Right now, the climate in door knocking isn't, you know, a hot climate, and folks aren't going to be wanting to answer the door. So part of our training pieces is going to be acknowledging the tactics, you know, in making sure that they're doing that in a safe and reliable way. We also will have block captains have name badges and a specific can you hear? Oh, sorry. What was it? Yes, specific t-shirt and whistles, and we'll have, you know, trained pieces so that they're able to identify the situation if a situation gets to that level. But part of that would be trainings that we would lead with the block captains during those phases at the early on phases.
And this would probably include know your rights and other civil and necessary trainings that need to happen right now. And then we would also work on an emergency plan should something happen in the neighborhood with pressure from, you know, external forces.
Right. So that's block captains. We also realize, 100 hours for the next 12 months could be a really big commitment for some folks, and they still want to be engaged on some level. So there is a third tier, which is community connectors. This is more of a flexible, low-time way to participate. Community connectors are still residents who want to participate in outreach efforts, but have limited time or availability to commit to the full 100 hours for the next 12 months. So their role is really short, more like task-based, if they're willing to, host a community meeting, a neighborhood meeting in their block, or want to host a one-on-one in their house with their neighbors. They're able to do that and still be compensated for their time. So we're doing a $40 per meeting outreach event with those folks who want to be community connectors. They would sign up, and we would have one of our block captains assist in those meetings to make sure that it's happening. And then they would get compensated for their time in hosting that meeting in their space. We have a budget. I believe you shared it earlier. It was 100 or something like that. I will double check. 48,000 for that budget. Yep. Any questions online? Those are the 3 tiers that we wanted to share with you all tonight.
Regarding eligibility, was there somebody else?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I noticed that you are limiting the group relationships to those that have a 501c3. It may or may not be true in the global area Swansea area that the active affiliations and organizations all have that. I know it's not true across the city of Denver in different neighborhoods. Some very active organizations and groups in neighborhoods are not 501c3, so I'm a little skittish about that precedent for this. So I just wanted you to comment on that. And then related to that, there are members of families I'm more familiar with Gloveville, where people are technically without their own address and part of the extended family. They may be staying with this family member or friend or et cetera. I would hope they could qualify somehow. And secondly, are you saying that the people that are hired for these positions are only going to be paid through nonprofit organizations on a specific list of groups, or can the people apply directly to SE2 or into what's the selection committee? How's that happening? Because I'm concerned about it being available to everyone who's qualified in the arena.
So individuals can apply to be block captains or community connectors. As far as the community groups, if there's a group that exists, I think we're open. I mean, right now, this is a community engagement budget, and these are estimates on what we would like to happen. What if we only have 2 community groups commit, but we have this budget to use? That budget is for community engagement. So then we're going to have to reallocate those community engagement funds in other and new tactics to keep the money in the community and keep people working on the surveys and getting that information. So my goal is to find creative ways to do that and make sure that money goes back.
Okay, good. So I want everybody out there to use their creativity. That's why I'm asking that question. There's lots of ways we've done canvases in the past in the neighborhoods that have helped create cash flow, but unlimited.
And I want to acknowledge it is a burden on community to do this community outreach engagement stuff. And I know you all have a lot on your plate. And so whatever we can do to get creative solutions to keep you all engaged, like if somebody's like, I can only work for a month, then it's like, okay, go work for a month if that's what you need. I'm not expecting folks to be on for 12 months if they can't do it, right?
I have a question. My question is, how are we going to protect like the block captains for representing the triangle, and then things don't come through that the community's asking for, and then the community blaming them for the outcome?
Yes, yeah, that's definitely a great question. So the block captains will have a role in the guidance team, which meets monthly with NUCO, the mayor's office, and who else is in that meeting? The guidance team meeting. They'll have an opportunity to talk through in the guidance team meeting, but it is a valid question that we would, make sure that if they are feeling that way, we acknowledge it early on, whether, it comes to that piece, to make sure that it's brought up to the respective parties early on.
Okay, so there'll be a process in place because this is a very sensitive topic for our community. And being a representative or a block captain, as you would call it, would be the person that would be the receiving the brunt of the complaints or the feedback. So it would just, we would hate for them to feel like they're being attacked.
Yes, yeah, we can definitely put a plan together that you all can, that the block captains would be able to see in part of the training processes as well.
Thank you.
Do you hire people with ITINs or have ways to, okay, you're nodding saying yes. Can I ask another question? Will the neighborhood organizations have to sign NDAs or any kind of like agreement about what they would agree to support or anything like that?
So for the ITIN question, we are looking to hire folks with ITINs as well. We're in the process of getting that figured out. So I will confirm once that is finalized, just to make sure that, we give the opportunity to everyone. And then as far as your second question, sorry, I spaced out. NDAs. They have an MOU that they would be signing, stating what they are available to do for the outreach efforts, so that they stick to that scope that they're as outlined in their MOU.
In general, what we're hoping to happen in these community meetings is people are filling out the survey and having conversation, right? It's not really like pro this or pro that. Like, it's more like, this is what we know about the community and then we need to learn more. It's like digging deeper. So that's what we hope to find out with the surveys.
Right. And so those are the 3 roles. We will follow up with this one pager for everyone who isn't in person today and share it out with you all, as well as a link to the block application form, so that you all can start sharing it out with your neighbors and your community as well.
In case that you guys don't, there's an issue and you guys can not accept people with the ITINs. I have known that there is organizations that they're making their employees or the people that it's helping them to get a LLC. Is that would it help in that case?
Yeah, that's also an option. I also know that the nonprofit center also can be a fiscal agent for folks as well. So if the 501c3 status or the ITIN is a hurdle, we are happy to help you all work through that. We are trying on our end to make sure that folks with ITIN are able to apply really hard. So hopefully that is an option that's true and we can make that happen for everyone.
I think it's also important to note that our block captains should be monolingual Spanish, monolingual English, and bilingual as well, and have a good mix so that neighbors feel like they can communicate effectively in these surveys.
Any last minute questions? Yes, yeah. And I will be around after the meeting too, or an email for those on Zoom if you all have any questions on those three roles of engagement. Okay, I think I'm handing it over to Beth.
All right. Okay. Actually, Elizabeth, would you mind? Sorry, I'm going to pass this out for everybody. I'm going to keep the first one just so I can have a reference. Okay. All right. So there's a lot going on. And what we want to kind of go through. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. If we can pull up, you guys on the screen can see this graphic that represents our planning process. And so we're passing around some copies right now. And we're just going to walk through it slowly because there's a lot going on this graphic. And this is the simplified version. So just kind of noting, we have across the top, you'll see there's 3 phases. So phase 1 is getting set up with our outreach, which is everything that Alvina and Elizabeth have been talking about, right? So getting our captains going and everything, getting ourselves set up for our first meeting and really focusing in on vision and goals. The second phase, just going across the top for a minute, is really getting into those planned scenarios for the site. So lots of options, a range of things, everything we want to look at. and that you're informing as we go. And then by the time we get to phase 3, we're zoning in on the preferred plan. That's the idea. So we've examined all these choices. We've integrated a whole lot of the things that Mike was talking about with the land trust and the different forms and options. And by the time we get to the end, we're all heading toward a solution. So that's the idea. What? Yeah. Yeah. We're going to be rolling all that in. So, okay. So let's spend a minute on phase 1. So across the top in the blue is the planning process. So this is that team of folks, us, MIG and Merrick, our technical engineering guys, are working through these pieces across the top. So in the first phase, we're focused on the technical requirements of the site, really understanding the dynamics, what has to happen on this site, what are the constraints we're working with from an engineering perspective, what is the transportation network, et cetera. And we're in the gray, if you kind of move down to the gray, this is our engagement piece, right? We're prepping for our big community kickoff event. We're getting ready. We're talking about and organizing for our survey, which we're going to talk about more in a second. And we're preparing for our Black Captain program and connectors and orgs and everything that these guys just chatted about. And so all of that sort of prep work is happening. And we're doing this first blue star called Community Organizations Introduction. That's you, that's tonight, that's where we are. And then you can see we have another little meeting scheduled for next week. And then we have the big community meeting the 11th of March. So lots of stuff has to happen to get us organized and get the Block Captain program going and prepare for the survey. So at next week's meeting, one of our big agenda items is this co-creation of the survey. So you guys had asked for that specifically, and we have a great team on board, and they're prepping lots of options and different things we can discuss about how we can co-create the survey. By the time we get to the first community meeting in phase 1, we really want to have that survey go live in coordination with the first meeting. That would be ideal. So that's what we're going to all strive toward. We want to get some of the block captains moving, and we want to launch that survey. Following that community kickoff meeting, then we take everything we learned from the survey and the community meeting and our other meetings, and we start to analyze things. We roll in all the work that Mike and group are doing on the Lincoln Institute and thinking about and making sure we're getting that in, and we prepare for our first series of community workshops. And so we can have up to 5. I don't know, that might be too many. I don't know how many people want to have, but during that period of time of the workshops, we could have as many as 5 small scale workshops within the community. So we go around, do it in different places, kind of over a week or 2, we'll kind of fit those in. If we only need 4, that's fine, whatever works. So you guys can let us know as we go. And that series of workshops will be around scenario development. So what are the plan options? What are the range of things we could consider? You know, imagine that you have Legos and you can move them all over. Where would you put things? You know, that kind of exploration. So we'll get into that, and we'll learn a lot through those different workshops. In the meantime, the captains are going around and getting people to attend these workshops. They're flyering, they're communicating, they're having house parties, whatever is the format that everybody decides on. And they're talking about this as well. And then we're hosting. These are continued, the little stars, the little blue stars represent the ongoing community orgs, or maybe we'll transition to the guidance team. That's what we'd like to call it, the guidance team. They're meeting with us and continuing to inform us, and the block captains are part of that, telling us what they're hearing. And we're gearing up for the creation of survey number 2. And so the guidance team is part of that, building that survey, getting it ready, and then launching that survey in the blue across the top in survey number 2 on scenarios, which is where we'll gather feedback on all these various ways we might approach the site. And then we review all that, we understand all that, and we prep for phase 3, which is then another series of workshops where we bring a little bit more refined version of these. So scenarios are everything under the sun, sort of. And then we move toward a more refined handful of options that are starting to make the most sense, that represent what you've been telling us and are feasible, but they have to work. And, we're pulling all that together. And those, as we get into phase 3, those planning options, we'll call them, are also integrating the land trust and the different forms and different things we're learning out of the Lincoln Institute. So all these pieces will come together as we march through this. And then finally, it's kind of similar to phase 2. We're doing another survey. We're doing the similar activities. Block captains are running. We co-create survey number 3, which really gives us that last big input on, hey, of all these more refined options, what is everybody liking? What's starting to make the most sense? Help us understand what works out of these and maybe where we still have a gap. We analyze all that and we all work toward this final plan. And that final plan, we're hoping, sorry, that was my phone ringing. That final plan should be coming together by the end of the year. That's the goal. And we will kind of finalize it, probably not at the holiday season. After in January, we'll have the last community event and wrap up and get agreement with everybody on what is this final plan. And like Mike said before, then that final plan informs the large development review, and CPD is with us the whole way through. So everything we're doing, community planning and development will follow along and make sure that we're building toward a plan that meets what they need to inform the site and the future zoning. So lots of pieces. Yes. Question. Sorry.
Yeah, I like the idea that the community is involved in the creation of the surveys around the overall structural, but will these surveys also have space to include the brass tacks of execution, at the end game, what the execution of this project is going to look like? I understand that during the COW it was mentioned, that we have a preference for involving community labor, and having our labor oriented in the neighborhood instead of development contracts that are coming from out of state, et cetera. And so, is that going to be, is there going to be space for that amongst the surveys, to put that up to the community? Do we want the workforce to be coming local?
We haven't got the plan yet. So yes, I think, I don't have the answer to that, but you're going to see next week, this is this tool for the survey is very broad. It is not SurveyMonkey. Okay. It's not hey, you get to pick 6 questions. You can design it in a lot of ways. People can upload ideas. There's a lot of flexibility with this tool. And so the trick is that everyone needs to kind of help the guy who will design it really understand what we want out of it, so that at each of the 3 phases, he's getting that tool dialed in to ask the right questions. So if that's something we want to address, maybe not in the beginning, but as we move toward a plan that's starting to come together to those implementations, might be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Regarding the surveys, are you going to have them anonymous or will you be tracking so that you can be making the numbers that were set and established? And then are those people going to be safe while you're maintaining their privacy and stuff?
Yeah. Yes, great question. So yes is the answer to that. We hope to collect demographic data so that we can say, how many people are we reaching? Are there any gaps in who we're hearing from? So we want to meet the goals that were established through the COW about how many people we're reaching. So we want to be able to use the survey to do that. That would be a big step. But the information is all behind the scenes and guarded. And the tool that we're using is the same one that the community planning and development is using for the people's participatory budgeting for the whole city. So their system is set up that doesn't share data, Yeah.
Is there some way that you can ensure that, like, put it in the survey up front so that when people are visiting house to house, they can give that explanation to them right then and there so that they don't even hesitate?
But yeah. Yeah, that is fair. And also next week, he's going to bring sort of like a layout so you can see how it would be set up. And then you can say, hey, is it possible to insert here? This data will not be shared or is not accessible to anyone else. So before it goes live, you'll see how it's laid out, what the wording is, and make sure that we hit those kinds of questions. But yes, I think there's just a lot of flexibility in what we want to say in that survey, each of them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Are there any questions online?
No.
Okay, so
yeah,
she's
Beth. I think it's fair to say when you say that you know that a lot of people, you're going to need people to work on. I think people in the neighborhoods have wanted to impact surveys for years, going for one thing, way back to the tiny home competing surveys that went out over in Gloveville. So I just want to emphasize that, and we talked about this, I hope, Elizabeth, that you conveyed some of the conversation from the last group meeting. I think it's really critical that this not be a paternalistic survey, but that people understand a survey can be designed in a way that draws people out to express what they really feel can come into the neighborhoods from wherever to enrich the quality of life, and that the triangle can be a part of that. I'm just want all of us in the neighborhoods to feel like this is a participatory thing, and the people that are making suggestions, great. We're the experts in the questions, being the experts in the lives that's out here. So I just want to have that dignity around it as it goes forward.
absolutely.
So the guidance team is going to be a combination of block captains, the community groups that are having house meetings, and the engineering team to look at the results of the survey, come up with what this survey, what these survey answers mean for our planning process, right? So it's kind of the coming together of what we're hearing on the doors and in community, reporting to the engineering community and the survey, and see if the survey is actually matching what people are hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the
So those are the groups. That's if you're in any one of these groups, you'll have an opportunity to be in guidance team meetings. Now, I don't think it'll be like 24 block captains. We'll probably pick 2 that were the busiest that month or whatever that might have some good insights, so that everybody, I also want to have shared leadership opportunities, that everybody has a shared leadership opportunity to join the guidance team meetings and be part of that planning process.
That's a helpful elaboration, and I hope that can become, and if it isn't, if I missed it, my apologies. I hope that carry over from the discussion. I hope that can be stipulated and described in the roles of the groups, and so everybody can be continually reinforced to step up for that and recognize that's what's encouraged.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that and our workshops are both just going to be really good avenues for that continued working together. Yes.
I just want to make a quick clarification. What I said earlier about when the Lincoln Institute will be ready. It won't be April, now that I'm doing my math. Yes, I think we should wrap up in June, right, Shannon? That's our... Yeah, so that I'd love to see it worked into some of the initial workshops to be able to start to socialize the ideas and then have them developed into those scenarios in that next phase. So we'll update this based on that, but I just want to make sure being clear.
Yes, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Elizabeth?
Because the block captains are on a 12-month contract, but this ends in January. So will there be continued work into April 2027?
When we hire on these block captains, we would
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we ideally want to hire folks in as soon as possible, right? But if we don't get the full 24 block captains until the end of March and they start work in April, we would then counter those months up until it meets the schedule in January. So it'll be right now 9 to 12 approximately. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you get like more than 24, I mean, if you get 200 residents, it can happen. How you guys gonna choose the 24? How you gonna know who's really, ¿cómo se dice la palabra? Sí, committed or that is really gonna do it?
That's a great question. We're hoping that all 200 apply. We're hoping that you all spread the word and we have an influx of block captains. That would be an amazing scenario for us. We have a rubric that we will share with you all on how we're what is it called? Scoring the applications. As I mentioned, experience is not going to be a factor for folks to deteriorate them from applying. That is not something that we are going to take into consideration. The biggest requirement is that they live in the GS neighborhood. We will also share that rubric with you also that you all have an opportunity to see it. Given that SE2 is hiring the block captains, SE2 will be selecting the block captains only.
What about tenure?
Yeah, that's part of the conversation, and one of the questions is how long have you lived in the neighborhood? That is also broken up into the rubric. There's points on like how long you've been in the neighborhood. We will also take that into consideration. I will share the rubric with you all after the meeting as well, but it breaks down how we're scoring those pieces and continuing the conversation around selecting those block captains.
And the rubric will be shared with applicants as well, so they don't have to guess on what we want to know about what they're doing.
What if you guys don't get your 24 block captains?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if we don't get the block captains, like I said, we're going to have to iterate a plan and get back to everybody and figure out some creative ways to get the survey out. It might be more. Yeah. But there's other organizational tactics that we can use, and we hope to like lean on you all to let us know what you think fits best for you. But we're open to being flexible on that community engagement budget. This is the initial plan, and as we know in community, sometimes we have to shift, especially if we have to shut our roads down because DHS is there,
How
What's
old they have
what's
to
the
be?
youngest eligible applicant?
Was that your question? Okay. What was the youngest applicant we can take? So we did have a discussion about this earlier, and depending on the final contracts that we are putting together as far as like the I-10 piece, we're also looking for youth 16 and up. 16 and up. So I know that youth are also a big part of the community and a big part of that voice. So we are wanting to get them involved as well. And that there should be an age piece too.
So we are at a time check because we're supposed to be out of here by 7. So we'll be around here hanging out and cleaning up. So if anybody has any final questions, I think we have an accurate list of all the documents that need to be shared with everybody that helped out in this meeting today. And if you haven't signed in, please sign in because we're going to follow up with everybody on the sign-in sheet after. Great. Thank you so much. So thank you to everybody online. Elizabeth's going to put her contact information. You can put mine too. And feel free to give us a call or.
Spanish and English. I also Spanish.
Oh, you do?
I just need English.
Oh, you need English.
Yeah.